Alright, we're going to talk a little bit about Lesson 28. Lesson 28 actually covers two very related things. It covers averages, which I will also sometimes refer to as means, and that's a statistical term, and then two-step word problems, which are very related. How do you find an average? I think most of you probably know that. You have to figure out an average for your grades a lot of times. And so you know that to find out the average grade that you would add up all of the numbers, add up all your scores, okay? And then when you have them all added up, you would count the number of scores you have, and then you would divide that total by the total number of scores that you have, okay? You know that. You've done it before, but this is just kind of nice to have it written down so that you know the actual way to do it, okay? So here's an example. We'll even use math scores, okay? So let's say you have scores on the math test. Those scores are an 85, a 94, and then you had trouble, you had a 73, an 89, and then whoop, you got 100. Now, how many scores are there? Well, if we count, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So keep that in mind. You have 5 scores. Our steps are, you add all the scores together, as you will see over here. Add all the scores together, and you get 441. There are 5 scores. Once you've added them together, you're going to divide 441 by 5. And when you do that, you get 88.5%. Now, most of us know that the teachers will round that up to 89. And when we talk about rounding, we would also round that up to 89. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about another type of average. And another type of average that you often see, and your parents have maybe even talked about it, is bowling. Bowling scores. Oh, it's really gonna hurt my average, he says. Let's say these were your scores for 6 lines of bowling. So you bowled 3 in singles and 3 in doubles, and these were your scores. Okay? So 110, 135, 116, 93, 140, and 280. Now 280 is a heck of a game, and the 300 is perfect. You have 6 scores there, and as we did before, we would add up the scores, and when you add them up, you get 874. And then once we've added the scores together, we would divide that by 6 to get our average score. This would be your score, and sometimes they talk about handicaps. Sometimes this average score helps them to figure your handicap. Your average score, if you were bowling those games, would be 145.6, but you would round that to 146 because of the repeating 6. Now we're going to be, sometimes we round things. In fact, quite often we round things when we're working on statistics, or if we're working on scores, or working on percentages, we'll round. And we're going to talk a lot more about rounding in Lesson 29. Okay? Now, another thing that you might see averaged are temperatures. If I went onto the website, I think it was the National Weather Service, and they gave me some of the average temperatures for November of 2012. And these were the average temperatures, and that was pretty warm, wasn't it? Well, 2012 was pretty warm. So here are the average temperatures for the temperatures for those days. There were 8 temperatures that I wrote down. So what we would have to do, of course, first step, add them all together. And when we do that, we get 412. That's our first step. The second step is to divide that 412 by 8, because there were 8 temperatures. When we do that, we get an average temperature of 51.5. Now, a lot of times statisticians will round that, but when it comes to temperatures, I think a lot of times they do leave them the same. But you would round that. If you did round it, you would round it up. It would be rounded to 52 degrees. And remember that when you're rounding, that's an approximation. It's not an actual correct, absolutely right. What else do we use averages for besides grades, temperatures, and bowling scores? Think about that for a moment. You'd be surprised at the number of things it's used for. Just think about it. Maybe even ask your parents, what do you use averages for? Because over the next few months, you're going to be amazed at all the different things that we use averages for. Now, maybe sometimes the score, or excuse me, my goodness. So maybe we would use the skill of averaging to solve word problems. Quite often we use the skill of averaging to solve word problems. Here's a situation in which we have some information and we have to figure out what they want. There are four intramural volleyball squads at Anywhere Junior High. The red squad has 6 players, white squad has 10, blue squad has 12, and the silver squad has 8. Well, somebody came in and said, oh, you got to even those out. Well, how will the coach figure out how many players to put on each team if she's going to even it out? Well, that would be finding the average. So, we will add up the number of players, and when you do that, there are 36 players, okay? And then we would divide that by the number of teams, and we know there are 4 teams. When we do that, we end up with 36 divided by 4, which gives us 9. So the coach would divide those teams into 4 teams of 9. That's not too hard to figure out. Okay, we're going to talk just a little bit about some two-step word problems. Two-step word problems simply are that. They have at least 2 steps to solve them. Okay? Let's say Susan went to the grocery store and she went with $16, but when she came home she only had $1.06 left. She purchased 6 cans of chili while she was there at the store. How much did she pay per can? Well, this is a 2-step problem. Okay, it's a 2-step problem. First of all, we've got to figure out how much she spent. So I would, if it were me, I would take the $1.06 that she's left with, and I would subtract that from the $16. And if you do that, it leaves you $14.94. Now we've got that. That's what she spent. That's what she left at the store was the $14.94. We know she bought 6 cans of chili with that $14.94. So our next step, our second step, would be to divide that $14.94 by the number of cans of chili that she bought, which incidentally happens to be 6, and you'll get the average cost per can. So if you do the math down here, you've got $14.94 divided by 6, you end up with $2.49 per can. That's not too hard, is it? That's kind of common sense, I think. Okay, last bit that I want to talk about here. Average is often referred to as the mean in statistics. So when you're figuring average, you also can think mean. Okay? When we find the average of a set of numbers, we are finding its mean. So then, just straight out, thinking statistically at this moment, what is the mean of the numbers 3, 10, 11, 11, 12, and 13? There's 2 steps, just like we did before with the word problems. First, you're going to add them all up. Count the number of numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Add them all up, it's 60. The number of numbers is 6. Divide 60 by 6, and you will get 10. So 10 is the mean. Here's another set of numbers, 16 and 30. Same theory. Find the total, divide it by 2. 46 divided by 2, you get 23. Now notice, 23 is not in this set of numbers. There isn't even anything close to 23 in there. But this is still the average or the mean of these 2 numbers. And when we get into doing more with statistics, you'll see that show up even more blatantly. Last one I want to talk about is this one. Notice we have the smallest number of 0 and the largest number of 150. Can you guess where the mean might be? Well, many of you might guess like 20, 25, or 30, but when you add all of these up, you get 319. You divide them by the number of numbers, which is 5, and you get 63.8, which is an average of about 64. Well, look at here. That isn't even close to 0, 12, or 17. It's actually a lot closer to 140. So sometimes when you find a mean, it doesn't appear to fit with the numbers. But as long as you've done your math right, you should be okay. I hope this helps you. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again later. Bye.